bring in Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton. He's a member of the Senate Intel Committee. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to be on with all of you.
It's great to have you as well. Griff brought up a bunch of things we want to talk to you about. First up, where are we right now with the president's many legal challenges to the election?
Well, I'm not sure where every single one of them stands. Obviously, there's a lot going on, but they're moving forward in an orderly process. The president has lawsuits in multiple states. He has a right to contest the results in those states, to expose potential irregularities and fraud. He's also, though, directed the General Services Administration to release funds to the Biden team to plan for the contingency of their inauguration. As Griff said, tomorrow or today is Safe Harbor Day, and the electors will cast their ballots on December 14th. So this is moving forward in an orderly process.
Mm-hmm. I know that Biden wants to nominate Xavier Becerra for HHS Secretary. I know you have vowed no on this. You said you're not going to vote for that. What's wrong with him for the job?
Well, Ainsley, I woke up this morning with a message from a friend in California who said that Xavier Becerra is so far to the left, he makes Bernie Sanders look like a Tea Partier. Let's just go through the problems with this nomination. So first, he supports Medicare for all. He's going to be responsible for running Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare and many other health care programs. He's going to use the discretion the law gives him to try to take away your health insurance on the job, to give less flexibility, less control to families and to states who are in charge of these health care decisions. Second, he's a true radical on abortion. He supported the lawsuits against nuns. He's gone after pro-life activists in California who expose some truly grisly crimes by Planned Parenthood. And third, look at what's happened in California during this pandemic. He has been on the forefront of locking down that entire state, of preventing schools from reopening and people going to church, of defending the kind of decisions we saw over the weekend where the city of Los Angeles will allow a well-connected film crew to set up a canteen in a parking lot of a restaurant, but won't allow that restaurant to serve people just outside their premises. Xavier Becerra will be Joe Biden's nationwide lockdown enforcer. The Senate ought not to confirm him.
Yeah, I guess this is the homage to Bernie Sanders. Okay, I'll give you somebody extremely liberal for Biden care. We'll see how that goes. Senator Cassidy weighed in, a fellow Republican, and said, if that's who he wants, I'll let him have it, but not with Tom Cotton. Tom, or Senator, let me move on and talk about something else. A bit of a surprise. It looks as though Joe Biden's pick for Secretary of Defense will be four-star General Lloyd Austin, four-star Army General, I should say, Lloyd Austin. Now, obviously, for someone to get this high, it's going to be historic. First African-American to be Secretary of Defense. And to get this far in your career, you got to be an extraordinary intellect and a great warfighter. However, there's some things in his past that are going to come up. For example, in 2016, in the Atlantic, he was quoted saying early in 2014, Obama's intelligence advisors told him that ISIS was of marginal importance. According to administration officials, that person was General Lloyd Austin. Also in 2016, General Austin also testified that out of all the Syrian fighters that were trained for millions of dollars, only 4 or 5 were ready to fight and willing to fight against Assad's forces. So are those two things going to come up in your mind? Are those deal breakers?
Well, Brian, I'm sure senators will scrutinize those and many other things, but I want to take a step back first and say that I commend and respect General Austin for his 4 decades of service to our nation. However, I, like many other senators, have real reservations about giving another waiver under federal law for a recently retired general to become Secretary of Defense. Remember, federal law requires that any general has been out of the military for 7 years before they can be confirmed as Secretary of Defense. We granted a waiver to Jim Mattis for that in 2017. I can tell you that senators across the spectrum, from liberal Democrats to conservative Republicans, are opposed to doing that again. Jack Reed is the senior Democrat on the Armed Services Committee. He said at the time in 2017 that he didn't like giving this waiver. It should only happen once in a generation, and he wouldn't do it again. A lot of Democrats voted against it as well. I suspect that many senators believe that while General Austin has served our country with distinction and he might be a suitable nomination for many other cabinet positions, that it is time to restore proper civil-military balance to the Pentagon, and granting another waiver might put that at risk. So I'll scrutinize that question very closely. I suspect most other senators will too.
Let's talk about something that apparently is getting some bipartisan support on Capitol Hill, and that is some sort of coronavirus relief package before the end of the year. Nancy Pelosi had wanted a gigantic amount of money, and now it looks like it's just a little south of $1 trillion, $900 billion, and it would add money to the Paycheck Protection Act. There would be $160 billion to local and state governments. But, you know, a number of senators had said, we're not going to pass this unless there are checks for individual Americans. We've heard figures like every family would get at least $1,000, $1,200, something like that. There's no money in this for those families. There will be no individual checks. I heard that apparently Josh Hawley, your colleague from Missouri, called the president and said, hey, you got to veto that unless there are checks that are going to go out to the people who are hurting. Where do you come down on this?
Well, Steve, first I want to say that it's a real tragedy that Nancy Pelosi was so cynical that she blockaded any new coronavirus relief for the last 4 months. She insisted for months before the election that she wouldn't come down a penny from her $3.4 trillion bill. And just last week, she said that she's ready to compromise. Why? She said because we have a new president. So she revealed what she had been doing all along, which is holding American workers and families hostage to the election because she did not want Donald Trump to get any credit for an improving economy or for the relief that we got to those families and communities. Now, I'm very open to a new coronavirus relief bill. I've been in support of one for months, but you have to look under the hood to see what it says. Obviously, we need to help those workers who are still unemployed or still can't get the hours they need because people like Gavin Newsom and Xavier Becerra in California have shut down their restaurants or shut down their bars. We need to help businesses that are struggling to keep their people on payroll. We need to make sure that schools can stay open, as is the case in Arkansas, or reopen across the country. We need to make sure that we have enough money to get the vaccine out as quickly as possible. So rather than the total amount of spending in this bill, some of which will simply be money that we didn't spend in the CARES Act and we have available to spend on these high priorities, I'll be looking at what the actual priorities and policies are of the bill.
Okay. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Thank you all. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Indeed.